So today we will classify dentin further and differentiate between the mantle and circumpulpal dentin more in detail, and we'll differentiate between the primary, secondary and tertiary dentin, describe the DEJ, and there's something called interglobular dentin and Tome's granular layer. We'll see what that is. And there are different theories of dentinal sensitivity. You know how you feel sensitive teeth when you drink cold things, or when you're eating ice cream or something. So that is something we're going to look at. And clinically, when you go to the clinics, there's something called smear layer and a smear plug. So we'll see what that is. This is related to operative dentistry. So you need to understand, whenever I'm showing you histological section, in some section you see like this pink and blue, and in some section you see black and white. The one which is decalcified is the one with the acid. You put the tooth in an acid to make it soft enough to cut it in very thin sections. So it's going to remove a lot of mineralized structure. Okay, that's why you don't see any enamel in a decalcified section, because enamel is almost 98% mineral. Okay, but you will still see some dentin and cementum and other structures of tissues. But when you want to study the hard tissue like enamel and dentin in detail, you should not put it in acid. So the other way of studying it is by making ground sections. So you just grind the teeth on either you can use a stone or you can use a hard tissue microtome. Microtome is a machine which cuts the tissue. Okay, so you can use a hard tissue microtome to cut the tooth in very thin sections, because if you just put a tooth under the microscope, you won't see much. You will maybe just see some surface structures, that's all. Some lines probably. But then if you want to study the structure in detail, then you have to grind it to very thin sections, or you have to cut it in very thin sections. So these are the only two ways to do it. Either you grind it or you cut it with a hard tissue microtome. Okay, so that's when you can see enamel and all its structures and dentin and all its structures. So you can see the primary curvature so clearly here. Can you see the S-shaped curvature of the dentinal tubules? So now we will go further with some other types of dentin. So we need to know what is a primary dentin and what is a secondary dentin. So the dentin which is formed before the root completion, that is even before the apices of the teeth are completed, is called as primary dentin. And whatever is formed after that is called as the secondary dentin. And these secondary dentin, there is a slight difference in its structure when compared to the primary dentin. They're less regular in their orientation. They don't have that, very organized arrangement like we see in a primary dentin. And another feature is it has different orientation. It need not be S-shaped and very neatly arranged. It can be arranged in any manner. So that's one of the structural differences between primary and the secondary dentin. And this we already know, dentinal tubules in primary dentin is very organized. It is in a S-shaped pattern. And there are few more differences. This is the primary dentin. You can see the S-shaped arrangement, and this is the secondary dentin. There are less number of tubules. Even if you see in this image, they're kind of like wide apart, whereas here they're very closely arranged with each other, which basically means that they're more in number, and that's why they're so closely spaced. Whereas in secondary dentin, they're lesser in number, and that is why it has lesser permeability. The course of the tubules, I've already told you, is irregular. They're not really very neatly arranged like the primary dentin. It has a very irregular course and arrangement of the tubules. And another important difference is it has more organic matrix, which means that it has lesser amount of minerals compared to the primary dentin. Okay, So whenever we say more organic matrix, automatically you have to assume that the mineralized component or the inorganic component will be lesser. So that was primary dentin and secondary dentin. There's another type of dentin which is called as tertiary dentin, and this is formed in response of any kind of irritation. It can be mechanical, it can be thermal, it can be bacterial. So whenever you're putting any kind of chemical very close to the dentinal tubule, or even like very close to on the enamel surface, but it can seep down to the dentinal tubule and it could irritate. We use acid to etch the surface of the tooth before we use composite as a restoration. So all these procedures are chemical irritation. Any procedure, not just cavity, you are preparing the tooth to receive a crown, you're doing a bridge, you're doing some aesthetic procedure, laminates and veneers. So all these will produce heat that will cause irritation to the dentinal tubules. Okay. So tertiary dentin is formed in response to all these different kinds of irritation. All right. And how can you identify it is tertiary dentin is because it is located very closely to the site of irritation. Say, for example, there is a restoration. So your tertiary dentin will be right underneath it. So D is the cavity, which you can see here. So the E is your tertiary dentin, which is formed right underneath it. Okay. And the difference in the histology is it is more irregular and even fewer in number compared to the primary and secondary dentin. Okay. So that's the difference with the primary and secondary. Lesser number of tubules and more irregular kind of arrangement. So this is your primary dentin, and this is how the tertiary dentin looks. So you can see how different they are. Here you can see such regular arrangement of those S-shaped dentinal tubules, very closely situated next to each other. Whereas here in tertiary dentin, you see it's very disorganized way of arrangement, and you don't see any tubules at all. If at all, there are like very few tubules here and there. So that's the difference in the histological structure of tertiary dentin. And this is a ground section showing pretty much the same. And there are two types under this, reactive and reparative. I don't want you to bother too much about it. Just remember, it can be either reactive or reparative. It is produced by the cells which are directly affected by the stimuli. Whenever the irritation is reaching close to the pulp, there is a stimuli, there is a signal sent. So the odontoblasts will wake up and they're like, let me protect the pulp. So they form the dentin just in that area. Suppose there is an irritation coming in this area. So all the odontoblasts here will wake up and produce the dentin in this region. That's what they mean by this. So this is another picture. Whatever we discussed till now, histological differences, you can very clearly see this is the primary dentin. The secondary dentin, which will have fewer tubules and it is less mineralized with more organic content and slightly less organized arrangement. And this is the tertiary dentin, even fewer tubules. See, the tubules have become so less in number, and you can see it doesn't have any organized arrangement at all, the tertiary dentin, correct? So this is the histological difference between the three dentins. Sometimes the tubules will be absent in some areas, and those dentin are called as atubular dentin. A means absence, okay? And these are the variations I'm talking about. What is osteodentin? Sometimes the cells will be entrapped in the organic matrix which is formed, and then later it will become surrounded by mineralization. There's sometimes even blood vessels will get entrapped, because it's a very fast process which is happening, and there are a lot of structures around it. There are cells, there are blood vessels to give nutrition. So some of these blood vessels also become entrapped, and that is called as vasodentin. Vaso is a terminology used for any vascular supply, all right? So whenever a blood vessel is entrapped, it is called as vasodentin. So these three are the variations which we could see. Absent tubules called as atubular, osteodentin when they become entrapped in the forming matrix, and vasodentin if a blood vessel is entrapped. Okay, and this we already discussed, the mantle dentin and circumpulpal dentin. I just wanted to tell you the thickness of the mantle dentin, that is about 20 microns in thickness. Okay, these are the incremental lines. Incremental lines are something you see both in enamel and dentin because they're all formed in small increments. So these are the incremental lines seen in dentin. Okay, let's go to interglobular dentin. I'll explain the mineralization part so that you can understand it better. So I told you that they're all formed in increments, right? So a layer of dentin is deposited by the odontoblast and then it becomes hard because when it is formed first, that is your predentin, is very soft. It is not hard like a hard tissue should be. Later on, it undergoes mineralization process. Okay, all the minerals are infused and then it becomes harder. So there are two ways dentin undergoes mineralization, either by linear, okay, or by globules. What do I mean by this? So linear calcification is just, it goes in layer by layer in a linear fashion. Linear means line, okay? So when I say globular calcifications, please look at what I'm drawing. So what happens is, I cannot draw it very well, but I'm trying. Okay, so there are globules like this, okay, which fuse together, and that's how the mineralization occurs, okay. So once they fuse together, this entire, they come closer and this whole area disappears and it undergoes mineralization. But sometimes what happens, they all come closer together and there is a partial mineralization in this area, but these central areas are left behind without mineralization. Yeah, so like I said, when the fusion does not take place, there is an unmineralized or a hypomineralized, meaning less mineralized area between the globules, and that is your interglobular dentin. This is a section which shows both the mature dentin, see here A, this is something which has undergone calcification, and the white areas you see here, that's the hypomineralized area or your interglobular dentin. So this is a section which is showing both the calcified area and the decalcified area very clearly for you to understand. So here you see how they have all fused together and has completed mineralization, but here they did not fuse, so they left behind a white area. And you can see here in this picture that the dentinal tubules pass uninterrupted. It doesn't matter whether this area is unmineralized or hypermineralized. There is no restriction, or they pass uninterrupted through these areas, hypocalcified areas. Okay, so just a quick summary of whatever we discussed till now, that is the different types of dentin based on the location. Intertubular, intratubular dentin, that is between the tubule and within the tubule. Mantle and circumpulpal dentin. Mantle is present closer to the dentinoenamel junction and circumpulpal is around the pulp. And based on pattern of mineralization, it is classified as interglobular dentin and sclerotic dentin. I'll explain to you what is sclerotic. And based on the development, primary, which is formed before the root completion, secondary, which is formed after the root completion, and tertiary dentin, which is formed in response to a stimuli. Main feature about sclerotic dentin is it is deposited throughout your life. Okay, throughout your life there is sclerotic dentin which is being deposited. That's why as you age, your teeth become more and more yellow. Have you noticed if there are any old people in your house? If you see their teeth, it looks more yellowish than the younger people because more dentin is deposited throughout their life. So, you know, enamel is translucent. So it is showing the underneath dentin as more yellowish in color. Okay. So there is something called as dead tract and blind tract, which you must know histologically. So whenever a dentin becomes damaged, okay, whenever there is any kind of irritation and it goes untreated, say for example caries, it has reached the dentin. So the odontoblastic process within the dentin, you know, the dentinal tubule has odontoblastic process. So this either dies or it kind of retracts into the pulp because it wants to save itself. It's a part of the pulp, okay? It just escapes, it just goes back. So this leaves very empty dentinal tubules. And these empty tubules are called as dead tracts, and they appear as dark areas in the ground section. Sometimes there is a mineral deposition to protect these dentinal tubules, and that is called as sclerotic dentin, which I told you just now. So these are called as blind tracts, and they appear as whitish in color in the ground section. So that's the difference between a dead tract and a blind tract. So this is nothing but the sclerotic dentin. There are various theories which explains how this pain is transmitted from enamel to dentin to pulp eventually, and how you feel the pain. So there are many theories. Let's discuss it one by one, and I'll tell you which is the most accepted theory. So just before we go to that, just understand these are the tubules, odontoblasts, which are the superficial layer of the pulp, and the process of odontoblasts traverses through the tubules. So we'll now try to understand each theory. So according to direct neural transmission, it's very simple. The name itself is suggesting what the proposed theory is saying. So what they say is that whenever there is any kind of stimuli, whether it is thermal or mechanical, there is a direct communication with the pulpal nerve fibers, and that's how there is a pain or a sensation or sensitivity, whatever you're feeling, is because of a direct communication with the nerve fibers is what this theory proposes. But it is just a theory. There is very little evidence that there is any kind of direct communication with the pulpal nerve fibers and the stimuli. So this theory is not accepted or regarded. The next theory is called as odontoblastic transduction theory. Here they say that the odontoblastic processes become excited and they release some kind of neurotransmitter, and these neurotransmitter impulses are transmitted towards the nerve endings. But there is no real proof that the odontoblastic processes are able to release any neurotransmitters. No neurotransmitters were found on the odontoblastic process, to put it in the other way. So even this theory was not accepted, but odontoblast has a very important role. We'll see how that is. So the most accepted theory till now or till date is called as hydrodynamic theory. So you know that there is fluid within the dentinal tubules, correct? So there is odontoblastic process, there is dentinal fluid in between, and your peritubular dentin, okay? So this fluid within the dentinal tubule will become disturbed by any of the change in the temperature, if there is any physical or osmotic changes. And these happen because of the stimuli, that is your thermal stimuli or the mechanical stimuli. And this causes a fluid movement within the tubule, either inward movement or the outward movement. So because of that fluid movement, it stimulates a baroreceptor. A receptor which can sense the pressure is called as baroreceptor. So whenever the fluid is moving inside or outside, there is a change in the pressure within the dentinal tubules that is detected by these receptors, and that causes a distortion of the intradental nerves, which I showed you. Sorry, the one in yellow in color. So that's what causes the pain sensation or the sensitivity which you feel within the dentin. So this is the fluid, as you can see, within the tubules, and whenever there's a stimuli, it either moves outwards or inwards, and that stimulates the baroreceptors and in turn transmits the pain signal to your nerve. Okay, so let's look at some of the clinical applications from whatever we studied today. So whatever pain and sensitivity which we face. Pain, of course, if there is any caries or if there is any other lesion, then that has to be treated in a different manner. But sensitivity, like whenever there is any a sharp sensation when you drink cold or hot drinks. There is a in-office treatment which you do whenever you go to a dentist. When you tell them the problem, they usually prescribe you a desensitizing paste. Okay, it can be any brand, whether it's Sensodyne or Colgate or any other brand, but the technology behind it is called as ProArgent TM technology. Okay, so it's based on nanotechnology, and what it does is it creates a seal to the dentinal tubules, this toothpaste, and it creates. How does it create a seal? It forms a plug on top of the dentinal tubules. You know that dentinal tubules are hollow, right? And they have the odontoblastic process inside them traversing throughout. So what it does is it creates a seal from the top, that is from the enamel end. Okay, and this plug contains arginine, calcium carbonate, and phosphate. So that's what this toothpaste does. So this plug, of course, it is protecting from any kind of stimuli from entering, and it is resistant to the normal pulpal pressures, to acid, to any kind of dentinal fluid flow can be controlled or reduced because of this seal, and that's how the sensitivity is reduced. Okay, so as you can see here, so these are the dentinal tubules which are exposed, and that's why it is causing the sensitivity, as you can see here. So that's what you see here. Even in the scanning electron microscope, they're open, whereas the ProArgent technology is going to seal all the dentinal tubules. Okay, so there is another application of dentin when it comes to your operative dentistry. Whenever you're preparing a cavity to receive the restoration, that is called as operative dentistry. Okay, so whenever there is a cavity or decay or caries is what we call in dental terminology. So whenever there is a caries, you have to prepare the cavity, meaning you remove the cavity and you prepare it in such a way that whatever restoration you're placing there stays there. Okay, so during this cavity preparation, the fluid which we talked about, which is present within the dentinal tubules, called as transudate of plasma, will kind of come out. Okay, when you're preparing the cavity preparation, so that is called as a smear layer. Okay, so this smear layer reduces the permeability of dentinal tubules as well, because it's like a protective mechanism, you can say. So it tries to seal the dentinal tubules, and a kind of a plug is formed with the smear layer as well as the debris which is created from the instrumented dentin, meaning you're using a burr. Okay, a handpiece with a burr. This is the instrument which is used to cut. When you're cutting something, there is some amount of powdery thing which is created. So that, along with the smear layer, forms a plug. And this plug cannot be removed by air and water spray. You have to use an acid, and that's why whenever we are doing a certain restoration called composite restoration, we need to acid etch so that we remove all this and create irregularities before we place any restorative materials.